there's a couple of people who are trying to do like a fully automated or AI first laboratories where it's just like, oh, everything is done in by AI or agents or robots in the lab, so that way. But then the question is, what are you doing? You got to know what you're building. So if this lab is to, bench to bedside kind of a thing. Okay, if we're synthesizing drugs, then yeah, you have to kind of pick your end goal, because as you design the lab, you got to kind of build your infrastructure, technology for it, and it doesn't exist. It does not exist. So you'd be very limited in, in what you were able to achieve.
Welcome back to the channel. I'm Crystal, the PTO coach, and I have Dr. Diane Nelson on the line. Now, this woman is a biomedical engineer extraordinaire. I mean, there might be some other things come up in the future. And Diane, just give us a quick background. One, say hello, and then let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Doctor, biomedical engineer by training. Spent a lot of my time in the drug formulation space, and now I'm branching out to um, close gaps in either the education space or the AI space.
Ah, man, I love that. I love that. And we're on today because we're on the phone earlier, and I was like, oh, this conversation is too good to be just lost on the phone. And just to get us caught back up, the audience caught back up to what's going on here. And you're on the East Coast. You've worked at like national facilities for science and technology. You've worked in laboratories. You've done a couple papers. How many papers have you written? Like, what's the subject?
Written 4, maybe 5 papers. 2 have been published. The other 3 are on their way out. The
Nice, nice.
subjects are drug formulation, specifically with perfluorocarbon liquids, and then the 2 most recent ones are dealing with extracellular vesicles as either drug targets or therapeutics, and characterizing them for use.
Nice, nice. Now, perfluorocarbon, if I remember correctly from you, is when you can drink or you can inhale, like in your lungs, a liquid that actually is safe to breathe. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is correct. That is correct. They've tried it with deep sea diving, they've tried it with going into space, and they've tried it with medicine, where this liquid carries enough oxygen where you can put it into the lungs, and your body still has the oxygen it needs in order to continue to thrive.
Now, for deep sea diving, do the people survive?
Yeah, it takes a lot of training because obviously it's uncomfortable to have your lungs filled with liquid. So in diving and in space, one has to be trained to be calm and awake and functioning under these conditions. But in the medicine, patients are usually sedated, so it's not, there's no learning curve there.
Nice. So live humans have now had liquid breathing in their lungs.
Yes, yes, they do.
I mean, okay. And then you said it was an extra, I'm gonna get the name wrong.
Yeah, extracellular vesicles. Yeah, so those are easy to think of like I call it sail mail, like snail mail, but it's mail or cargo in between cells. It's how they communicate. It's how they talk to one another and convey information. The vesicles, or like, little cargo packets, are filled with either RNA or proteins or lipids, which communicate to the different cells. Um, and they're very specific. They can be targeted to certain organs and tissues and cell types. And so where there's a lot to learn and discover about how they work.
Nice, nice. I mean, look, the whole topic. I love these topics. Now, I'm just gonna get into it because I told you this before. On the West Coast, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have what some would call a San Francisco consensus, where we kind of assume AI will take over everything, and the world is done now. We just have AI. But you're saying like people aren't there yet.
Well, yeah, most people. San Francisco is what percentage of the nation? And like you had said
True.
earlier, they are the cutting edge. You guys have seen stuff that most of the nation would not think is real or possible. You guys are like literally right at the cutting edge of innovation. you're funding ideas before they've even hit the market. You're that's understandable that you think, well, AI can, you see this coming down the line. Yeah, you can see all the different businesses, all the ideas that people have had. AI can either make them obsolete, or it could, exponentially increase them, super, or move them super quickly. So yes, you guys have a very different perspective than everybody else who's still wondering AI is just a chatbot, and chatbots aren't very useful. We've had chatbots before. I can go online to like Bank of America. Oh, how can I help you? And I don't get any help. I still need to ask for a representative. Um, so yeah, no, everybody is not there. I was going to say there was someone who I was just at a conference, and there was a talk on AI, and they had not used it at all. They hadn't used it at all. They've heard of it, and I don't really want to say, but people that I know very closely have only saw an interest in using AI to create images to help them with their PowerPoint presentation. So it's cool, funky images, and let's see what it can do. And that is as far as the desire goes to use AI.
I mean, what do you think is holding people back?
Lack of understanding, and well, yeah, it's a lack of understanding, and there's no curiosity is really what I would say. There's no curiosity, there's no thinking about how anything, whether it's their job, it's their day-to-day life, can be done differently or easier. Most people
Hmm.
are very content with the way things are, whether it's horrific and slow moving or not, but most people are not willing to change, and most people do not spend time thinking about how they can change their lives. So when a tool comes in that says this can change your life, people are like, what do you mean lives don't change?
I mean, this is to me, it's such a curious question. Do you feel that bosses or managers or leaders of companies are thinking differently than their employees are, or do you think this is like top to bottom in some places?
Some facilities that I know of, it is definitely that the employees uh, and subordinates are way more interested in AI and using it than the supervisors are, for sure. For sure. And then, of course, in other places, like I had mentioned that other example, I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody had said they fired everyone, some startup had fired everybody on their team and just went all AI. I don't know how successful they were with that, but the CEO made that decision. It was like, oh, AI is here, and grabbing it by the horn.
And you don't need to be. That's what they said. You don't need to be. Okay, you right now. It's interesting, namely because one of the biggest pieces I think I found is my encouragement to others is just to get started, right? I don't want to complicate it. It's like you and AI can be in this kind of work flow together.
Yes, I completely
It
agree.
sounds like people like, as far as they've gotten is ChatGPT, even not even to the point of like agents.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So one, I know some folks who are saying Google is going to become, like, the idea of Googling something is going to become obsolete, and now folks are just going to go to ChatGPT to get their questions answered. So that's at least a little more forward. But if not, ChatGPT help draft an email or come up with a pretty picture is as far as I've seen a lot of people think its utility is.
Well, I mean, that's to me like it's outstanding that even that impression exists.
Mhm.
2025 June, right? The date, because what the date is important. Like this recording is June
The
2025.
fourth, yes, yeah,
For future purposes, the fact that people even still exist with like, oh, AI is not doing that much beyond my email answering. Have you
mhm.
seen any of the agent work where like the agent is literally doing the job of the person? Like it's sending emails, it's writing off tasks, it's opening programs, it's like controlling the computer.
I have seen a lot of that. I work closely with Guidance Technologies, which a close friend of mine is starting up, and he has shown me a lot of the work that he's pitching to companies, and exactly that, using agents to help them with their workflow and their process.
And I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, well, what happens when you said, like, can the rest of America absorb the layoffs from San Francisco, right? You mentioned like I mean, in SF, a lot of people have been somewhat prematurely. Maybe someone says it's too late. Actually, maybe it was late that they have all these layoffs that have happened, and the question is, where do those people go? Right? Do they go to other states? Do they go like what? Do they go to other industries? Think about Detroit. It's a car building factories, a lot of welding, a lot of manual work there. And when they shipped it overseas, like where did the workers go? Because I think we're having the same problem. Like, where did they go?
Yeah. Where did they go? How long did it take them to get there? And like you said, there was a whole city that supported the fact that the welder welded, and so now what does the barber do? What does the school system do? There's a lot of infrastructure that's in place to support somebody doing a single, for one human to exist in a certain place. So yeah, I am very curious as to that process.
Well, if let's say agents replace, let's say it starts from the West and agents replace as many people as possible. I'm not even saying just AI, but let's imagine this autonomous tool replaces as many people as possible, starting on the West Coast, right? And that moves east. Over time, I would suspect that either one, we would come to some balanced state where people are like, they've laid off enough and now they have just the right amount to get the work done and they're comfortable. Or we move to a state where people try to migrate to other states, other industries, and it just doesn't work, right? Like there is let's take the assumption of farm work. So I think factory work, I think it's still blended into the 21st century. There's a lot of factory work left. It just wasn't for cars. For knowledge work, 'cause that's really what's getting replaced right now, knowledge work especially. I mean, other stuff too, but knowledge work. What other industry can accept knowledge workers, right?
Well,
But
I think what it might look like is because I think a lot of the entry level jobs are going to go first, right? Because
Mhm,
now more senior level coders or senior level people who can innovate and who have a little more people skills, I think their jobs are at least fine for the moment. It's the people who are literally just data crunching, just writing code, just debugging code, who are going to have the hardest time. Just drafting or editing emails. But I think at least for the software engineering group, or data, that kind of computer coding group, um,
mhm,
they could be absorbed in the other companies that aren't as forward thinking. You know, America has a ton of companies, and most of them are not in Silicon Valley. They're not FANG. They're not top, whatever the S&P 500 or 1,000 or those things. And it's like there's plenty of companies out here that don't have data scientists, that don't have anything on the cloud, that don't have any knowledge of cybersecurity. And I could see these junior engineers who, powered by AI, would be very well equipped to go into a tiny, maybe 500 size, 2,000 size company and get them set up and get them, they're kind of on the lagging uh,
mhm.
edge of this movement, and just start getting them more AI, more and more AI ready. So, yeah.
That's incredible. I never thought about leading edge and lagging edge, right? Those in the lagging edge are still going to need solutions, and a junior engineer is still completely capable and now equipped to do the work of maybe, let's say, one or two senior engineers, and the senior engineer can do 100 engineers now. But like, I just take a junior engineer who has enough background, like you said, in a smaller company, 500, 2,000, like a nice size range, but they have to move.
Yes, they would have to move, and they would most likely have to take a pay cut. Now, this is where we left our conversation off. Uh, because I had some ideas. Because it's like, well, I know that Silicon Valley is extremely expensive, but the
Mhm.
pay is, yeah, I can't really speak toward the pay, but clearly folks are able to exist there. I can't say they're thriving. Um, but it would be the same thing. You move to Kansas or Missouri, Mississippi, and the cost of living is much lower, but so is the income. So that
Mm,
takes care of those people. Now, for those in Silicon Valley who have been making bank, the
mm,
assumption is that you have saved enough in order to take that pay cut. That would be my assumption. And that's a very naive assumption because, of course, people's living expense, their cost of living goes up, and they're not necessarily prepared for a pay cut and to sell the big house and move somewhere smaller or take kids out of private schools. And it's like, well, I don't know what that is, but for those who are flexible, who can scale back, or who have been scaling back, even though they've been making, you know, a lot more money, they'd be able to absorb it. So yeah, it's a transition, right? It's not like this is forever, but it is in the short term. In the long term, I don't know. AI people everyone can be a five man, a very lean team of five people. You can the world is your oyster now. You can come up with anything and you can do anything. But if you want to work for a company, if you want a good job, as they say, then yeah, you're gonna have to have more realistic expectations.
Mm. That releveling, someone could say baselining is brutal.
Yes, I don't disagree.
That you just said was like you pay
Yeah,
cut, you drag your kids out of private school. And I'm saying it with the way it would feel somebody lose the
right.
house, lose the cars, lose not like, of course you probably sell them, but the way we think about it, you lose it, you lose the house, you lose the cars, and and you start over effectively, right? And you still need these new AI tools. You said like now you could use some AI tools at the smaller company to really thrive, but you still need some tools.
Yes. Yep, you still need the
And
tools, and yeah, it's not going to be easy. But the other option is, of course, especially let's just assuming you're getting paid well, then you may have access to the people who you can have that conversation with and say, hey, what are you willing to pay for? If not my coding skills anymore, then
mm,
what? What are you willing to pay for? So yeah, maybe middle management might be hit pretty hard as well, because if you don't need subordinates anymore, then you kind of don't need middle management anymore. Middle management doesn't necessarily have the ear and eye of VPs and executives. So yeah, but it's certainly going to be brutal. It's not going to be easy.
it's gonna be easy, man. That sounds like that's a whole thing. And to your point, I like how the who will absorb. You're saying it's smaller companies that are on the wait to adopt. See how it's working out. That might have on-prem systems. Now there is on-premise AI, which means the AI that doesn't leave your container, right? Either that's a cloud container that's included to you, or even literally database at your company downstairs that like that's where your AI tool is, and it's on-premise and no one's stealing it. I'm gonna slightly shift a little bit because you're a scientist, and there's a claims by OpenAI that at some point they're gonna have PhD level reasoning. Now, I personally have some qualms with that because yes, you could just be quote unquote could know a lot of information, try a lot of stuff. There's something about a PhD, and we've all had it. That third, fourth year where you were low in the dust, not finding nothing, that like a spark happens, right? Something where you're like, that's the solution. Do you really think, at least today, AI can replace that treasury and then that spark?
Can replace the spark, that is for sure. Um, I do think AI, when they say PhD level reasoning, I really do think they're talking about the literature review. And yes, AI can replace the literature review, and we ask junior PhDs in their first second year to do the lit reviews. That's it. But like you said, it's that third, fourth, fifth year where where the real work is done, where you are now an expert in your field, as in you have fully understood the literature review and what has and hasn't been tried, and you make an innovation, right? You connect something from one industry to another, and then that is how, that's the innovation. You apply physics to, biology or something like that, and boom, you get a breakthrough. And I know I don't think AI is going to completely do away with that. An interesting thing that they have been using AI for, the hallucination, is to generate ideas. Hallucination has been used for two areas. One is when maybe it's gotten a little better now, but when you ask AI to write a paper and it just creates papers and then they don't really exist, there's your research. Go, you need a paper that can make certain claims. Go do the research. See if that's actually true, if those claims can be made.
Now,
And for hallucination, the other thing is that some people have used AI for like to create molecules and proteins, because it's like, well, we don't know what exists, and so neither does it, and so it starts creating stuff, and then you see whether or not it's real or function, and it has made discoveries. We can't say that they're functional or anything like that, but it's made up something, which is by definition creation and something that's new and patentable. So yeah.
Now, I like how you ended that because I was going to bring up protein synthesis, drug discovery, and you should see the number of patents since AI has happened in a lot of different spaces, like the hockey stick patent level. Like you said, it's created something new, right? So it is new. It's not that that's not true. So it is patentable. It is new. But like you said, someone still has to check it. But we still don't know if it's real. It's just like, what was the algorithm before? There used to be a couple based algorithms that would do protein synthesis and would try different combinations of things, like the chirality of this, molecule. They would switch it and do this, and like they would discover things that way. In a way, I think it's just a better model in that reframe. But to your point, it still doesn't know if it's going to work. It's like, here's what I made up. But like you still have to go figure it out. But what if let's just take the assumption to the level, right? Like let's say you got an agent working a robot arm at a chem lab that's able, like you see, that's able to move around, do some of the mixing, do some of the whatever, and then could, in theory, diagnose if the actual results were viable. So maybe it creates, let's say, 100 protein combinations in like 24 hours, takes those 100 protein combinations, tries them out as it's like learning them, and then spits out results like work, this didn't work, this worked, this didn't work, da da da. Is that replacing the PhD?
No, because the PhD comes in with what tests to use. How do you define viability? I mean, the biggest issue with research now is that things in vitro, like what you're talking about, testing out proteins in the lab, doesn't translate to viable drugs in the human. So somebody, whether it's most likely a human in tandem with an AI, need to really create new test beds in order to actually get us to those breakthroughs. Now there's a lot of stuff that we can do. And I was just at this. There's an AI Expo in DC right now, Monday through Wednesday. And I was there on Monday, and they were giving a talk about how everyone says that there's a ton of data, especially biological data. We could just feed it into the AI. AI will know everything. Yeah, but most of that biological data is not AI ready. It doesn't have any metadata. It's not labeled. It's nothing. It's just it it cannot be understood by the AI. And the question, and so people are just starting from the beginning and just regenerating all of this data. So how long is that going to take? You need billions upon billions of each like cellular interaction and cellular mechanism in order to train an AI and what something does. So it's certainly not it's a non-trivial problem in order to get the AI to run a biological function or assay that's of any value to us.
Okay, so I shouldn't be paying $20,000 a month to OpenAI to give me a research level assistant that has PhD reasoning because you're still going to need a PhD to work with it. Is that what you're saying?
It depends on the question that you're asking, right? You might just be wondering, well, has anyone mentioned anything about XYZ? By all means, pay the $20. If you're saying, can you draft up a grant for me? By all means, pay the $20. I need an intro, background. Can you come up with any type of pitfalls or, timelines of this result? What's the most, best case scenario? What are the normal studies that are usually done to test these things? Yeah, the AI can do all of that, but humans have been thinking for a very long time. So if it just comes up with all of the normal stuff that one would expect, you're gonna most likely find that it's pretty much been done unless you come in there with an innovative idea and ask it to think in that in
Your point, though, in terms of just thinking through kind of what's been happening on, like you said, if you wanted just to do, here, synthesize this thing, do this thing, sure. And I'm saying, OpenAI, I think you might have missed it. They have a $20,000 per month model. You're wrong. That's 20000 a month model. And in their mind, that's the salary you would pay a PhD level person. And so why not pay their AI, which works 24/7?
so you remember my background, right? I'm coming from a wet lab, heavily hands-on space. I can do maybe 10, 20% of my job on the computer. Everything else is in the laboratory. So, and on top of that, as the NIH said a couple years ago, most of the papers that have been published are not reproducible. So you got to be a little careful about what is what the AI is reading and learning about. If yeah, at least if it's NIH based research, not reproducible. Chances are you have to take those things with a grain of salt, or you have to try them on your own before you consider, like before you take those assumptions and then build your experiment or your thought process off of it.
I think that's so interesting. Like to point out that wet lab work is 20%. It kind of just does a different paradigm shift. Like it's really saying you're a hands-on worker that does a little bit computer work.
Yeah, I'm the welding. I'm the welder, right? Like it's a, let's circle back to the beginning. Yeah, very, very hands-on with very little computer work. And the goal is to shift it, absolutely. But now we're talking about robotics, and of course, like things like the Hamilton exist, and you can have very, semi-automated laboratories for sure. But that's way more than $20,000 for just Chat GPT and literature searches. And
But you're saying that space has room to mature. I mean, like there is a path. I think you used to work with rats. It was like or mice. Is it mice?
right, rats. It was rats,
Wow. Okay. Man, I was like, man, I'm hitting
rats
it
and
wrong. Okay.
rabbits.
Rats and all the R's. Okay. You used to take rats and rabbits and you would inject solutions into them, right?
Right.
So I'm like, thinking like, how much of that can the AI do? Like, can AI grab the animal? Like, will we be comfortable with AI grabbing human things and like technically giving it a death sentence? 'Cause we know a lot in the lab, we know a lot of times, and there is a human element of like sensitivity towards life, right? That I don't know if AI is going to mimic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are all really good questions, and it's going to be at least a twofold approach, because that will be solving a short-term issue, which is okay. We want to kind of automate some sort of animal experiment. How do we do that? And I'm sure there's going to be a company that's going to start that up. But then the better question is, why can't we just do away with animals and have enough benchtop experiments done to where we know that it'll work in a human? And there's a very big push now to do away with animal trials. We don't know how. We we don't know how
And
to
we don't
make
know
sure
how.
a drug can
I
go from benchtop to safety without putting it in humans and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I'm gonna say for those of us like I get that this is a harder topic, but the other alternative is we just try humans first.
Yes, very much so. And we still do try humans first, right? Because animal studies almost never translate correctly to human trials. So you just make a very small animal study that says, well, it won't kill you, but we don't know if it'll work. So you put it in humans, and you just make sure that the humans aren't sick and there's no heart palpitations and things of that nature. But again, efficacy is really coming into question here with what will it work?
Okay. So in some odd way, because like you would think my office work is protected. I'm using my brain. The machine
Yeah.
can't do that. And now it's like that's what the machine can do. What it can't do is use its hands.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's of course like the Tesla facility is like mostly automated. Like that would be the standard. So however much a Tesla facility is using humans to make cars, that would be what we're looking at. But humans humans are humans. They still need physical, like we're a physical being, so we still need physical things. We need roofs over our head. We need like our plumbing to work. So sure, if a bot can come in, but I mean, it would take a very long time to redo infrastructure so you can get a robot to come and fix your plumbing, because your house is 100 years old, my house has new plumbing, and this is that, and somebody did it wrong in the past. And so there's a lot of troubleshooting that humans can do a lot faster and better than a robot can today. We can of course we can
Yeah.
always build for that in the future.
I think you like it's basically a trades era revolution, right? Where the trades have become valuable again. I'm saying that I don't know if the trade people like we've always been valuable. You've always been valuable. I agree. But this is
Mhm.
one of the cases where it's like That's now stuff that we know, like, we don't have great solutions for, like you said, individualized attention. Now, we can build a factory fast, but building a house, coming in and fixing your plumbing, like you said, PVC pipe over here, a little bit of copper over here, sewage issues, we know a business owner that actually still in 2025, their entire business is really just replacing sewage systems that are in homes on lands that are not connected to city sewage systems. And that seems like amazing, right? To be like in California in 2025, there are businesses that are just only dedicated to sewage because
Yep.
they're not connected to city pipes.
Right.
It's almost the analogy that we're saying. It's like there's going to be some companies that never connect to the cloud. They just don't do it. They don't connect to AI on the cloud. They're just like, I want my own waste here at my house.
Well, that's possible. I mean, so for like intelligence agencies, they probably have, like you said, some cloud that's in house or their servers are, very close to them, so that way they can air gap things or whatever all that entails. But yeah, not connect to the World Wide Web for sure. Um, yeah, there's always going to be a need to not have, because nothing is perfect. Everything has a weakness. There's always going to be a need. That's why we have air gap machines. It's like, what do you mean? You're not connected to the internet, like the global internet. And she's like, yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. I need something like that does not do that for whatever, however that's designed and created. Yeah, we need sewage and stuff that does not go into the main city lines because maybe we're doing chemical waste or whatever. It's just like we need our own thing. And yeah, that's always going to be the case.
Fascinating and fantastic. Like that's the insight that I needed to hear, right? Like there's always going to be things that, of course, there are going to be people who connect to a city line and get and live in the apartment complex that goes to the skyline and that has robot attendants because in that kind of framework, if you imagine a skyscraper that has a robot, attendant, I don't think that one's impossible. It's just like window washing. To be
Right.
honest, I don't want a human up there. Like it's
Yeah,
unsafe.
yeah. Speaking of that, there's a professor at Princeton, and he did a lot of work with autonomous vehicles, and now he does a lot of work with these like new cities. I forget exactly what they're called, but like
Like
these kind of new
smart
age
cities.
cities that people are wanting to do in their high density living.
Okay, well, this is my last question. From the space you're in right now, right,
Mhm.
and the role you're in right now, like just the companies you've worked for, a person with your background, we just said like biomedical engineer, I mean, highly skilled, like you said, and doing the actual work. Where do you think you go next?
I go into the innovation space, right? I'm freed up to my job will be to come up with as many ideas as possible. Like that's what humans are, what we excel at. We are extremely creative and we don't follow the rules. Versus AI is going to be trained on things that have been done in the past. It's going to have a hard time, really, really getting into human ingenuity. And so, yeah, my job is to come up with as many tests and creative and crazy ideas for the future that I want to live in and want to build. Um, and make sure that AI can test them out for me as rapidly as possible. So that way I can come up with even more ideas. So yeah, I just have to pick up the pace. I got to speed up and doing the thing that I do best. I've been freed from emails. I've been freed from data analysis. I have to interpret it, but I don't have to crunch the numbers and write the code anymore and spend time on problems that honestly have already been solved over and over and over again. I can truly get at the crux of the issue, which is how do I synthesize a molecule in the lab and get it into a human same day, and
Mm,
knowing that it'll be safe, knowing that it'll be effective, and knowing that it will solve the problem, cure the disease, treat the symptoms, whatever it is, and have that turnaround time done immediately. That's where I start to think.
that's from Dr. Diane Nelson on what she does next, which is just innovate and create, which I think is excellent, excellent. Diane, we appreciate you coming on today. It's been a wonderful conversation. I don't even know. I'm so happy we got here. And I know you're on the way somewhere, and like your car has been excellent audio. So this has been just fantastic. We're signing off here as a Crystal Bray. We're PTO coaching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Okay, bye.